Near miss in October turns the page for Nebraska for a pretty big November. This is the Pick Six podcast with the Omaha World-Herald. I'm Evan Bland, Sam McKewon, Tom Shatel, back here in the pre-Halloween edition of the Pick Six. And guys, we were almost here talking about one of the more historic upsets in Nebraska football history. Didn't quite happen. Is this just another near miss? Or is there something different about this one against Ohio State, do you guys think?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, they were supposed to lose by a lot more, and they kept it close. They played well. I just take every week. I kind of by itself right now. I don't know if it means anything. I thought Rule's post-game speech was good, and I think he thought it meant something. He saw something in that game that he sounds like he's been trying to find for a while, and I think it's that the players are kind of figuring it out for themselves. So at least in that game, but as observers, fans, people who follow Nebraska, you kind of hear you've kind of heard it all. You want action. You don't want words. So we'll see what happens Saturday. But I thought that I expected them to. They could have played worse than Indiana. They had to play better. But the question was how much better. And they had Ohio State on their heels. They were ahead in the game. And they didn't. I think Nebraska played great, but they certainly played well. But it wasn't well enough to win. So I guess we're all kind of bottom line right now. We'll just see if all this stuff Rule talks about is going to carry over.
Mm. Yeah, I thought there were 3 or 4 guys in that game. Evan and Rule pointed it out after the game on Monday, that played the best games of their career against Ohio State. And I don't know if that's a compliment or if that's you could have gotten an A in math class the whole time and you decided to do really well on one test. I think that Ohio State presents an opportunity to guys of like, hey, there's going to be a bunch of NFL scouts there. This is an opportunity to go play a team that everybody's going to be watching, put something on tape for your future. And I thought a couple of guys, especially on defense, did that. Obviously, John Hull played the best game of his career, but he's a kicker, and he can make 4 kicks against anybody. So I think there's something to be said for the quality of performance. I think that matters. That's probably the best overall performance they've had this year, with maybe the exception of Colorado. But it didn't lead to a win, and the next time they play a team of that quality, we'll have to see if they're able to do that. UCLA this weekend is not a team of that quality. Neither are the other 3 remaining opponents on the schedule. Although I think the last game of the season on Black Friday is a hell of a test. And if I was 8-3 going into that game, playing at night on Black Friday, that'll be as tough of an environment as you could ask for. So Nebraska will have an opportunity to do something potentially special there. But I think that. I'm kind of where Tom is. I think you kind of exit October. They were playing with house money when they went to the Horseshoe. They played pretty well with it. They came out with more than they came in, but now they're going back down to the smaller blackjack table, and they should do pretty well there. And we don't know. I think Nebraska goes against UCLA. This is very similar last year to when we went to Michigan State. The crowd wasn't very big that day. The opportunity was right there in front of them against a team that was reeling, and they didn't get it done. So this will be an opportunity to do what they couldn't do last season.
Well, that's the thing that is I think is the best part about these last 4 games is that it will be an accurate accurate photo of where this program is at the end of they weren't ready for that last year. They weren't ready to go to East Lansing and win that game. They didn't have the pieces that they have now, and they were just starting this whole thing. That is taking a year or two to get finally, I felt like, okay, it's arrived last week. That was the message. So, okay, it's arrived. It's alive. It's Halloween. It's arrived. Here they are. Now, these last 4 games are teams that, okay, they're not going to be huge underdogs in any of these games. They're favored by 7 this week. They're not going to be huge underdogs against Wisconsin or Iowa. I'm not going to call them equals because Nebraska hadn't beaten them, but they're certainly going to be able to match up with them and go find out if they can beat them. If at the end of year 2, after everything you've been through and been taught and all the experience you have, can you go win these 4 games? They're going to have a chance to win all 4 of them, I think. So, including USC. I don't know what USC is going to be like, but if they go up to Seattle and lose, the Trojan faithful aren't going to be in the mood for anything. They're not going to be all fired up. I'm not sure what that crowd will be like for that game. So, or what kind of mood everybody's going to want to fire the coach if they lose to Washington. So, anyway, I think the last 4, it's exciting because you get to see, okay, Nebraska, what do you got?
Yeah, and I think the formula, like, did they find a formula in Columbus that can carry over? Like, the run game looked a little bit sharper. What we saw from Dowdell and Emmett Johnson was a little crisper. Dylan Raiola running, like, that was notable. He hadn't done that to this point. He surprised everybody on the team, everyone who was watching. That was a new wrinkle. Thomas Fidone continued to be part of the offense for a second straight week. So, like, there were elements there. And then how much do you trust the defense to wrap up, to make those tackles? They were back in vintage form when they've had a couple of games when that hasn't necessarily worked out. So, like, when you talk about consistency, is the problem just execution? Hey, there are games they're not making plays, or has it been psychological, do you think? What's maybe been the thing that's kept Nebraska from being consistent, and do you see that changing here next month?
Execution is psychological. It's all mental. It's a mental game. Are you going to go make the play or not? You have confidence to make the play. Do you know you're going to make the play before you step on the field? That's where I was going through all these old UCLA Nebraska games last night. Nebraska just show up knowing they were going to play well. All right, Nebraska isn't there yet, but can they get there? That's kind of what these last 4 games are to me. But yeah, I think they've until we see it again, I don't trust it. Defense, yeah, everything last week we had the formula to go win some games these last 4 games. Can John Hall do it again? I loved it. But can I see it again, please? Dylan Raiola running. Yeah, if you're a defensive coordinator, you're not quite. Yeah, okay, that was nice, but is he really going to do it again? Is he going to run again? I want to see it again. And then if he does it again this week, then people have to pay attention to it. They have to. Okay, we got a game plan. We got to have a guy watching him in case he does that. And the same with the defense. After the Illinois game, they went 2 games and played great. Then they went down again. So, all right, this 2-1 deal, just go every game and play that way. So, yeah, that's kind of what this week is about: winning, win 6. Have the bowl guy can fall out of the sky and throw all invitations to everybody, and we can go to the travel agent and figure out where we're going to stay. But it's about consistency, doing it again and again and again. So I love the formula. I want to see it again.
A lot of the topics out of this game, or one of the main topics, was officiating. A lot more so than in a typical game. The one that made the rounds nationally, of course, was the Emmett Johnson run before halftime, where the ball spotted 1.5 yards short of where he actually crossed the sticks. And Matt Rule talked a little bit about it after the game. Sam, certainly a lot more on Monday. Is this just another example of, we're frustrated with the officials? Or I guess what did you take from Nebraska's reaction to this particular game, and will it mean any change moving forward?
Well, Tom talked to Troy Dannon about some of the same things, and certainly Tom can speak to this. So the way that I think Matt Rule laid out his thought process on Monday was a little bit of a winding road, but I think there was a main point in there. The main point that I think he's trying to make is that when there's a replay office in the Big Ten, and that office is consistently making mistakes, in other words, they're not, and he didn't say that exactly, but that there were replays that were wrong last season, and then there are points of emphases with the league 1 week after Jeremiah Smith pushes off against Oregon, and I don't know if Ohio State then went to the league and said, well, are you going to start calling that on other teams when they do it to us, or whatever it was. And so I think there's a feeling that, like, when it comes to the league, there's almost too many different changes and shifts and emphases and different things that are going on, and it's affecting the on-field officiating product, that they're almost looking over their shoulder a lot. And as a result, it's diminishing the flow of the game. I actually think those comments were outside the comment about the spot, because the spot was a decision that was made by an official on the field, and I don't think the official was worried about looking over his shoulder. He made a poor spot. And then for reasons that aren't entirely clear to me, the Big Ten replay office in Evanston or wherever it is, in Chicago somewhere, didn't stop the game and make a change. And I think it's because he didn't get the first down, and so somebody may not have been watching it in the moment, listening to the Fox broadcast or whatever was going on. They didn't stop the game. And so I think there's a frustration with replay, but simultaneously they desire to have the game sort of determined by the officials. If replay's sort of out of it, that spot still happens. And so we didn't ask him if he thinks there should be a Hawkeye system like there is in tennis, or a system like they have in Major League Baseball. But the general thrust of what I think he was talking about is, let's get to the point where it's not just a Big Ten office, but it's all power conferences all on the same page. And I think what he was advocating for is we need to get the leagues kind of out of this a little bit and let the officials call the game. And he said it in sort of a patchwork way, because I don't think he's trying to, crucify the Big Ten, but I think he's frustrated, and what I think he's hearing potentially is that the officials just don't always know what they're supposed to do, and they don't always know what they're going to – it's like the officials are taking a test, and they don't always know what the questions or the answers are going to be, and it's affecting the way they're calling the game. I don't know if that's what Tom got from Troy, but that's kind of what I picked up from Rule's comment.
Well, the most telling comment from Troy Dannon the other day was one game we'll get 5 penalties, the next we'll get 12 or 13, and we're doing the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
So
he's a former official himself, Troy Dannon.
I just think,
there you go.
Why wouldn't you? Is anybody getting tired of this? And from the conference standpoint, players, the coaches, the athletic directors, fans, and the officials themselves, aren't you get tired of getting hammered and having bad calls and second guessing? There's got to be a way to get everybody, in college basketball, the referees do so many different conferences. They do 5 games a week, which is too many sometimes. But it's more of a national. There's the block charge thing is more of a national rule. It's not a conference by conference thing. Mm-hmm. In fact, football is too much conference by conference. It's again not ruled by a commissioner. There's no body. There's not a governing body of college football. It's conference by conference, and that takes away from the officiating. It should be more even. There should be rules on pass interference, or Matt Rule throws his headset. That's 15 yards. Ryan Day does it. Nothing. I mean, there's got to be consistent rules across the board. And do it for every league. But the problem is nobody is in charge of college football, so we're going to have all these different. But Troy's thing was, let's at least get the top 4 conferences together, because I asked him, you think this might be something that the Big Ten and the SEC do together, combine on officiating and get rules set for those two leagues? And he goes, he goes, yes, but let's do all four conferences. So great ideas, great comments. The rules thing was fascinating to me. I'm probably get too involved in rules press conferences, but I just find them fascinating as hell. That he would point out all the mistakes and all the ways they got wronged and jobbed, and all the apologies they got, and still compliment the officials. We're for you. We're trying to help you. We want to make you better. I thought that was incredible. I've never heard a coach basically call out the officials like that for stuff they've done and then compliment them and try to get them back on their side. I thought that was, I'm not saying he was doing that, but that's how I read it. I thought that was great.
Well, he did slip in that both of his unsportsmanlike conduct penalties, they came back and told him the next day they should not have been called against him. So
I love it.
There was that.
Love it.
Let me ask you this, Tom. I mean, you've covered college football for a long time. Is officiating, in your opinion, actually worse, less consistent, or are there just more high-def cameras, more replays on social media that exposes all this, and it's really been this way for a long time?
I think we're more aware of it. I really do. Rule even said, I thought this was fascinating. He used to stand behind Joe Paterno on the sideline, and there'd be a call, and Joe wouldn't say anything. He wouldn't argue it. He would just go on to the next play. You know, the old Rick Majerus used to say, "Don't worry about the call; just happened. I coach the next play," and that's old school. But there wasn't a lot. There was some of it. There was, the old NFL films thing of Marv Levy when you over officious jerk. It's just they've yelled at officials but I think we're a lot more obsessed as a football society right now, and I think it's too much of a crutch. I've never liked blaming it on officials. I try not to ever write about it. I know it drives people crazy, but I won't, because everybody it's a game. Football is a game of mistakes. Players make them, coaches make them. So why can't officials make them? Why do they have to be perfect? Well, they say, the coaches get fired. Yeah, well, so do the officials. But yet, the things happen like the Texas A&M Nebraska game, and you think, well, I don't trust any of this stuff. I don't believe what I'm seeing because of what happened that night. So,
and you wrote that was more of a message from the league they were leaving at that time.
Yes, and I mean, Bo Pelini told me at one point that one of the officials made a comment to him about it. So it was that was Big 12 though. Whatever.
Mm-hmm. We talk about heat and about blame. That was sort of the other topic that came out of that game. A lot of talk about Marcus Satterfield, who's been calling plays for Nebraska, and in the moment, I mean, we were in the press box, Sam, and you could just even on social media see how upset people were with the screens, the horizontal passing game.
Yes.
What did you make of Nebraska continuing to go to that well without really any success in terms of yardage, and just the conversation around Satterfield right now and the heat that he's taken as the OC?
I think there's a couple of different things at play. One of them is that during the course of the game, when you have a team that's bringing a lot of pressure, you have a couple of different options at your disposal. One of the options you don't have at your disposal is to stand there for 4.5 seconds and throw intermediate routes, because those aren't going to be there because the quarterback's going to get sacked. So you can either throw go routes, right? You can throw, slot fades or actual fades, or you can try to have a short passing game. One of the things that you run into when you're throwing the go routes is, one, they're harder to complete. Two, you can't throw them every single time, but they'll adjust their coverage and they'll pick it off. Nebraska did throw some of those for anybody that was watching the game. Simultaneously, they threw in some shorter passes. The shorter passes are safer because you're not likely to throw an interception, and if somebody drops it, they drop it, and it's not going to be too much of an issue. So some of those plays are just baked into the cake. I think Matt Rule acknowledged that on the last drive of the game to run a couple of those back-to-back probably wasn't necessarily something that they would do again. But I understand why when it's 1st and 15, you're running one, and then when it's 2nd and 19, what you're trying to do is you're trying to get half that yardage back so that it's 3rd and 10 and you're in 3rd and manageable. And one of the things that they could do is not get a false start. They got a false start at the beginning of overtime against Illinois, and they got a false start in a very, very important moment with 1st and 10 at the 46. Can't get a false start there. That's a moment where you can't do that. And then, they're trying to get yards back from there. And so those are some of the reasons. I understand why people are frustrated. I posted a comment yesterday that Dylan Raiola ran the ball, and Marcus Satterfield did say, shoot, I didn't know he could run like that.
He did. He said
and
cool.
And he said it was cool, and he wanted to see more of it. And I posted, I didn't know he could run like that. I didn't take that out of context. People were like, what in the world is this guy? Why is this guy even coaching? And what was interesting about Satterfield's comment is that I don't know that he's necessarily in charge of Dylan Raiola at this point. And he kind of said as much yesterday. He's like, well, I don't know if I'm speaking out of turn or whatever. But he's not really in charge of that quarterback position. That's Glenn Thomas's job. And Dylan Raiola has not run. And that's kind of on him a little bit. That's on the quarterback. You as a coach, you can tell him you need to get out of the pocket and scramble and run, but only he can do it. And when he did it, you know that he had done it so rarely that Ohio State had no answer for him, and he rumbled. He rumbled. That was a rumbling. 38 yards because they were like, he's not going to run. And I had written the week before, he's not a runner because he hasn't done it. Mm-hmm. And so I was glad to be wrong, but the reality is no one around that program has seen that because Dylan hasn't shown it.
But shouldn't they know that? Shouldn't you know what your quarterback can do? Shouldn't you ask him, can you run? can we try that in practice, see what you do? I mean, and shouldn't the offensive coordinator be talking to the quarterback about what he can do? And,
yes.
And the quarterback coach, shouldn't they meet? And I get that there's a quarterback coach and a quarterback.
Yes.
But the coordinator's got to be in on all that. He's going to call plays.
Yes.
He's got to be in on all that stuff.
I think they're not running the quarterback as part of the zone read scheme. They're not going to do it.
Well, but I'm saying you should be able. Okay, if you got to take off, are you able to do that? I mean, and I just got the feeling Dylan decided this. Like I'm tired of what we've been doing. I got to do something different. I mean, he's always trying to be a step ahead, and in that way, he's an offensive coordinator. In some ways. But I just think these are things, sometimes the stuff Marcus says is, we used to have a saying in the Big Eight, I think one of the Oklahoma State coaches just say, I don't know if I'd have told that. I don't know if I'd have said that, but I think it was Pat Jones that said, I don't know if I'd have told that. In the case of Marcus, I don't know if I'd have told that.
He's done that several times this season, and he kind of answers questions off the cuff. I wouldn't put myself necessarily in the defender camp. I wrote all about what their offense didn't do last season. At the end of the day, he doesn't necessarily talk about it in a way that's super encouraging to Husker fans. And this last month, we'll see how it goes. I mean, I think he's a good play designer. I think there are times when he calls good plays. That 2-point conversion call looked pretty good to me. Mm-hmm. San Francisco 49ers used it on Sunday night. They didn't copy Marcus Satterfield, but you know what I mean. And the Kansas City Chiefs have used that, and it was a good call at the right time. And I thought they found some answers in the second half of that game. I do think Dylan's scrambling helped them. Then they get to the last drive, and they don't have a ton of answers. And I'm sure Husker fans were frustrated. I didn't have a problem with them running it 3 times inside the 7 when they got down there 1st and goal at the 7. I would have liked to have seen one throw, maybe on 2nd down, or maybe you run the Jalen Lloyd play on 2nd down, and then you throw it on 3rd down, and then you run it on 4th down or whatever you need to do. I think it would have been good to get 2 plays inside the 5 there to have just maybe a couple of 2-point opportunities. And so, I think there was a lot of different things that they could have done differently. I think he probably gets the proper amount of heat to some degree on social media. We probably could stand to ask him a little harder questions. If I'm being really honest, I think, and I mean this on me, not on either of you, but I could have simply asked, well, how is it you didn't know that he could run? That's a reasonable question to ask. And I'll be honest, I think at times we're almost kind of rushing through some of the pressers, and we need to slow down and keep them there. And they're trying to rush people through, and it's such a structured environment that it's like, hey, you got 4 minutes with these people. These guys got to get going. It's 4 minutes. You can't. And not anyone else, need to slow down and keep them there for a minute, and it'll be okay. And that's part of their role is to answer those questions, or that's what Rule wants them to do. So I can ask slightly harder questions of Satterfield. Somebody posted to me on social media, why are we asking harder questions of Dylan Raiola? Yesterday, I actually agree. I thought Dylan was getting more pointed, exact questions in some way than the coach, and that's on me. Like that's an area that I can own and improve in.
And Raiola, for what it's worth, brought up Satterfield unprompted when he talked about saying it wasn't his fault and the execution falls on the players. Like, nobody asked Raiola about Satterfield specifically. He brought that up, so you can tell they're feeling that a little bit. They're aware of some of that stuff that's going on that in that regard too.
I think Dylan Raiola is mature beyond his years, and I think he's also media savvy, which is beyond his years for a freshman. And he's a team guy. He's a locker room. That showed me that he's all about the team and locker room. He's gonna have his guys back, and he expects Satterfield to have his back. And but that's a move that in the face of the 2 losses, that I think it's a good move, and I think it's whether you agree with him or not is not the point. The point is that he's going to have his back, and that's the kind of culture they have. One thing I haven't written this yet, but I really appreciated the way Matt Rule has kind of kept this thing together in the last 2 weeks. I think after Indiana, it got loud, it got ugly, and I think Rule has really managed with his words, and they've taken some stuff head on, but there's an adult in charge, and I really feel like the Nebraska Fishbowl is not for everyone. Okay, it's not for a lot of people. And there have been several head coaches come through here that are, not several, but I feel like we've had 20. But there have been a few who didn't know how to handle this thing. And I feel like Rule is very savvy with that and how to manage the program and the fans. And not everybody's agreeing with Rule, but I just feel like the last 2 weeks, I think things could have gotten out of hand a little bit. And I think going into this big game Saturday, the team's in a good headspace, and I think the head coach is a big part of it.
One more quick Satterfield thing I want to get your guys' thought on. So, like, you hear the saying about how you don't want to bring players that don't fit your culture into your program. Do you think that can apply to coaches as well, in the sense of, like, maybe Satterfield's not the cutting edge X's and O's guy, but he's got that history with Rule that goes way back at multiple stops.
Right.
He the culture that Nebraska has cultivated, I think, is becoming more evident, especially that shows out in the Ohio State game. Is there more value in Satterfield as sort of that culture guy that should be a factor here when we're talking about what his value is to the program?
I think you'd have to ask Matt Rule that. Go ahead and do it tomorrow.
I could do that.
Seriously.
Yeah.
No, I mean, Matt Rule hired him.
He did.
It wasn't because he had the number 2 offense in the country in South Carolina. So he didn't. And so I think that's a good question, and I think that's a question that we I'm not saying you literally have to ask that.
I can ask him that.
But my point is that, like, I think that's a great question, and I think my answer would probably be yes, but I don't think it's like this guy came in and he's Cliff Kingsbury or anything. Like, that's not what he's there to do. So I think he is there for culture building and for relationship building and all those things. I won't be at Rule tomorrow, so I think, and maybe tomorrow's not the time to ask that question, but I do think it's a reasonable question to ask. Is what is his great value to your program, and what has he done well? And if Rule doesn't like that question because it's not the right time of the season, well, that's part of it. Is that I think we've gotten a little reticent. Well, I don't know, this isn't the time, and okay, we'll see how they do against UCLA, and if they play really well there, then they get their bowl game, first one in 7 years. That's a major achievement.
Can't overstate that.
Can't overstate it. That would be a huge achievement and a huge thing, and all the rest. But he gave a really good answer to my question about what you guys hang your hat on. I think it was a very good answer. But just because he said, well, we're not thinking about it that way, doesn't mean it was a bad question. 8 games into the season, most of the time people have an identity. I don't know that they have an offensive identity yet. Some of that's probably because you got 3 different guys trying to figure it out. Whereas on defense, it's pretty obvious who they are. And some of that's because of the personnel, and some of that's because I think Tony White was hired not only for his culture, but for the fact that he had a track record that was elite. And he has continued that elite track record at Nebraska.
The Satterfield would be a good story. I think that's a good bye week story.
Yeah.
If I may, here on the podcast, I think that's. I'm not sure if it's something you do tomorrow because, you could, but I think that sort of angle is a good angle. Kind of why is he here? Maybe part of an overall story on him. Maybe the bye week is the time to do that. Maybe not, but in my opinion, he's here to start the program, and I think that's okay. You want an offensive coordinator to be the best offensive coordinator, right? But I think what you're saying is right on. He's here. He's going to help Rule get the culture started. Does that mean he's the best offensive coordinator? Does that mean he's going to be here going forward? I don't know. The way he's going, I don't know. But to me, what is the identity of what do you want to be on offense? I just get these.
That's right.
Mixed signals. We want to be physical. We want blocking on the edge. So are you recruiting those kind of kids? Who have that mentality and that edge on offense, and are you getting those kind of transfers? These 2 receivers they brought in, they needed playmakers for Dylan, right? So I don't think blocking was part of necessarily the deal. We just need to get some guys on this team who can help him. But going forward, I just wonder, is there going to be Tony White, the head coach of the defense? Are you going to hire a head coach of the offense, and that guy knows the identity. He knows what he wants, and every transfer portal guy, every recruit, there's a way from day one you are taught this is how we're doing it.
Right.
I'm not sure that that exists right now.
One thing I will say about this weekend, and I think Tom's right, that it's a bye week examination in part because the defense they're facing this weekend is no joke. I don't know where their headspace is going to be because I think headspace has been an issue for UCLA all season. I've watched a lot of Deshaun Foster's pressers, a lot of Eric Bieniemy's pressers, some of the players. I think they're going through having a new head coach and having a really hard schedule. Now, it would be worth doing the mental exercise just for a second to look at UCLA's schedule and ask yourself honestly what Nebraska's record would be. Because UCLA has played, if you go through it, UCLA played at Hawaii. Nebraska would probably win that game. Then they played Indiana. We already saw that result. At LSU, at Penn State, home against Minnesota.
Oregon was in there.
Oregon at home, and at Rutgers.
Yep.
Now, I think Nebraska would probably be 4-3. I see 4-3 there because I see Rutgers, Minnesota, Hawaii, and then maybe another game in there. But it could be 3-4.
3-4, 4-3, yeah.
UCLA is 2-5. This is not a traditional 2-5 team. They've got good football players. Their headspace is kind of weird, but they got 4 guys on their defense Jay Toya Femi. I can't know exactly how to say his last name, but he's the defensive end. They've got the leading tackler in the Big Ten, I think, their middle linebacker. And then they've got Brian Addison, who's a safety who transferred from Oregon. They basically ran him out. And, well, I don't know what happened exactly. And then he went to UCLA. They got 4 defenders that are going to play in the NFL like next year. So this is a legit defense. Their offense has major issues, which I think to some degree is related to an NFL coordinator trying to come and run an NFL offense at a collegiate program that just ran Chip Kelly's offense, but whatever. But UCLA could hold Nebraska to 13 points. I mean, that's distinct possibility if UCLA's in the right headspace. I don't know if they will be. So Nebraska's got a real test on Saturday. This is not a Purdue. This isn't Purdue. This is a much better defense than that. And so Nebraska's offense will have to go out there and play really well in order to score 21 or 24 points. They're not going to waltz to victory. And this will be a great test for Satterfield and that offense. And again, the reason I say ask Rule is because I think Matt Rule hired him, and I think Marcus Satterfield works for Matt Rule. Mm-hmm. And I think Satterfield largely, although I agree with Tom, he does not answer some of these questions very effectively. He is a soldier for Rule. He is Matt Rule's right-hand man. You tell me where to line up. You tell me what you want us to get done, and we'll get it done. And so I think that's who he's been all season long, and I respect the role that he has to play within that program. And he does. He takes a lot of crap. He does. I think he takes a lot of crap. And he probably deserves some of it for the way that he answers some of the questions. But at the same time, he's got a boss. And we'll see. We'll see what happens this weekend.
Yeah. We'll spend a couple minutes quick on Nebraska basketball. They had their exhibition. They beat Grand Valley State by 20 last week, and now the other Grand Valley, Texas Rio Grand Valley, Monday at night at PBA kicks off, or I guess tips off the regular season. And they got Bethune-Cookman next weekend too during the bye week, so that'll be fun. The football team's been here, now the basketball team's coming here.
Are you ready for basketball season?
I think it's time. Yeah. Basketball.
Do you think they should move this back like 3 weeks, Tom? The start of basketball season?
Well, they used to.
Yeah, they should.
It always started the week before Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
And
early.
Not a weekend before.
Yeah, it's too early.
Yeah, I mean, Nebraska basketball is it's here, and it's going to take a while to figure out what kind of team they're going to be. We know eventually they're going to want to play defense. They're going to want to play hard and all that stuff. Can they make a few outside shots? Can they score outside the 3-point line? They're going to have a chance to, but it's not going to rely on just one guy to do that. So as they have in the last couple of years. So I don't know. The schedule they have isn't going to tell us too much. When they go to Creighton, we'll know more. But they've got a lot of nice pieces. Raleigh Wooster, I like that name, Raleigh Wooster. I'll be able to say that and write it all year. He's a good point guard, and that's something they haven't always had. They had it a couple of years ago with Sam Griesel, but maybe they were very effective with Sam. But hopefully they'll get to that point here with Raleigh. I just the other night I saw Creighton, and they looked like they were in the middle of January. Everything was clicking. It won't always be that smooth for them, but they showed up ready to go. I guess a top 10 type team. Nebraska played whoever on Sunday. The arena was empty. Not a lot of energy there, or excitement right now, but they'll get there. But it's just a different feel right now. It's another rebuilding year, or reloading. They have a couple of old vets who I think will be the leaders. Bryce Williams and Juwan Gary. So I look for them to be a different team January and February. I like for them to be a lot better then, have a lot of the roles figured out. I think they'll be on the bubble. The Big Ten is is not that good this year. It's
No.
probably fourth among all the leagues, if that. And so Nebraska's going to have a chance to be right in the middle of it.
So when you say Big 12's best league, basketball.
Year in and year out, yeah. I think
and
so.
then the SEC and the ACC, I think, are both better. And then is the Big East better? I don't know. I mean,
Yeah, the Big East is going to be better than
So,
the
yeah,
Big
the
Ten.
Big Ten
I don't
is
think
the
the Big
fifth
Ten
league.
has a whole lot going for it. I mean, the team I saw the other night, the Boilers were the Big Ten favorites, I think. I mean, they're good, but they weren't as good as Creighton. So, but again, this is an exhibition game. But yeah, I don't think the Big Ten is very deep. I don't know who Michigan State's got question marks. Indiana thinks they're going to be good, but they've got
What else is new? Yeah.
We'll see. I just the West Coast schools aren't
not quite there.
aren't going to bring much.
Yeah.
So I don't know who do you got? Iowa's, Minnesota, no. Wisconsin, no. Wisconsin's going downhill. They're kind of on sliding. So yeah, but Big Ten hoops is not looking great right now.
What's Nebraska's ceiling in the Big Ten? Given all that,
I don't know.
top five?
I don't know how we don't know if they're any good. We'll have to watch and see.
I think they could be in the top 5 of the league, and the tournament, the Big Ten tournament is always kind of a crapshoot. Although Purdue's won it the last couple of years, I think Nebraska can make a run in that, a pretty deep one. Like I just think Nebraska's. I mean, they don't blow you away, but
if they can score,
they got 9 or 10 guys. Well, the one thing I'll say about Nebraska's team is that Tom's right. They need to score. On the second thing, though, they probably got 9 guys. Like, so you don't have to say, well, if this night, if James Palmer doesn't score, Nebraska's screwed because they only got 4 guys who could score. And if James doesn't score 20, then no one else does. This team, you have Bryce Williams is probably your James Palmer Jr. He'll probably average 17, 18 a game. They like Bryce a lot. And if he doesn't score that, let's say he scores 8, well, somebody else can score 15 because you've got probably not Worcester, but Gavin Griffiths. I think you've got Connor Esigian, who can clearly hit threes. And I think you've got some guys underneath, and Juwan Gary can have a night. So one of the things I like about the team is that if a guy is just not really feeling it and he's struggling, then you don't have to keep going to the well. Like you can spread it around. They probably got 4 guys who can make threes. I think the most interesting thing about the team in the first month, Evan, might be playing time. Like how they figure out who's going to play and who's going to be the odd man out, because they probably don't have minutes for somebody who probably should be playing minutes. And the schedule's not great. It's pretty soft. I think that's purposeful and calculated, and I think it's smart.
Mm-hmm.
I don't say that lightly, because Nebraska's schedule is not very exciting for the paying fans. I do wish for Husker fans that they got one marquee non-conference game in PBA. They don't. Like, there's not that game because they're playing at Creighton this year. And so, however, I think the way Fred sets it up is that the way that formula works, blowing teams out is more beneficial than losing to good teams by 7. Mm-hmm. And so he's doing what he needs to do to put his team in position to make the tournament, and that's what matters. And
I think that's right. Especially in a normal year where the Big Ten has a bunch of good teams, but this year they don't.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder when you get to Selection Sunday, how many quality wins is Nebraska going to be able to get? There aren't that many in the Big Ten. Not right now. There may be later, but I'm Evan. I can't pronounce this gentleman's name.
Burke.
Yeah,
Burke.
I'm not. Yeah, we'll just call him Burke. I'm really intrigued by him. He's 6'10". Looks like the kind of guy that's going to play outside a little bit. When Fred was at Iowa State, he had a 6'11" point guard. I mean, he likes to do things like that, and so I think they're going to have some guys who who can provide a little muscle inside, but they got Burke outside. He comes from UCLA. He's played at this level. I'm intrigued by him, and but it should be a good year. I think maybe the headline is where Nebraska basketball is now way past the time where the head coach is in trouble and everybody's doom and gloom. It's going to be a bad year. Now we expect them to be challenging in the Big Ten and challenging for an NCAA tournament spot. So that's a good place to be.
Good subplot for this season are there 4 guys from the Metro who are playing at Big Ten schools, none of whom are Nebraska. So John Tonji's at Wisconsin, William Kyle's at UCLA, Frankie Fiddler's at Michigan State, and St. Thomas is at USC. And what's interesting is, as it relates to St. Thomas, who played at Millard North, Eric Musselman said, if he has a great year, we'll have a great year. So they're gonna rely a lot on St. Thomas to. And I don't know that Nebraska pursued Frankie Fiddler and they pursued William Kyle. And Kyle might be the most valuable of those 4 players because of what he can do defensively. But of course, I'm excited to see what Fiddler can do. I mean, who isn't?
Sure.
I'm really excited to see if he can. He was, the second best player in the Summit League for 3 straight years, right? And so let's see what he can do at the Big Ten. He could never quite win that award because the guys that won those awards went to Creighton and Kansas. So we'll see if Frankie Fiddler is a star at Michigan State. Should we go to picks?
Let's go to picks.
Yeah. Okay. Last week, Evan was perfect. He went 10-0.
I'm flattered.
That was impressive. I have to admit. It's rare to go undefeated this midway through the season. It means you're on your game. You were ahead by 3 on me and 6 on Tom. Duke at Miami.
Go Canes.
Yeah, Miami.
Miami for me as well. Sneaky great uniform and helmet for Miami. I'm not sure we could ever acknowledge that because of who they were for many years, but they look pretty cool. Texas A&M at South Carolina. A&M's playing some ball, though. And here's South Carolina playing pretty good, too.
Go ahead, Evan. You're in the lead. You go first.
I'm gonna go South Carolina.
I'll go A&M.
I do, too. That team's playing. I mean, they kicked LSU's ass in that second half. It was impressive. Ole Miss at Arkansas. I'm going to go with Arkansas. Ole Miss is a little bit struggling.
I'm going Ole Miss. I think they lost a couple tough ones.
It's at Arkansas?
It's at Arkansas.
Yeah, I'll go with the Hogs.
Arkansas for Tom.
Separation Saturday.
Pittsburgh at SMU. Pittsburgh is undefeated. SMU is 6-1.
I'll take the Ponies.
SMU.
SMU for Evan. Pitt for Sam. What would Pitt's record be if it had UCLA's schedule? That'd be a question.
It wouldn't be 7 of them.
No. Minnesota and Illinois, I'm taking the boat. PJ Fleck.
Ooh.
Minnesota is favored, and they're favored by 2.
At Illinois?
At Illinois.
Why are they favored?
I don't know. It's not injury related. Illinois' quarterback's going to play and all that.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I don't think they're the same team at all. I'll take Illinois.
I'm going to go Illinois as well.
Good one here. Wisconsin, Iowa. At Kinnick at night. I'm taking Iowa.
I'll go Badgers.
There you go.
I'm going Iowa.
If it were a day game, I think I'd take Wisconsin, but that night thing there.
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
This is an easy one. Oregon, Michigan. Oregon.
Duck.
Yeah, Oregon.
Oregon picked the right year to play Michigan. USC at Washington. This is a 2-point favorite USC. A lot of road favorites in the Big Ten this week.
I'm going to go the Huskies.
Wash.
Trojans.
USC for me as well. Good game, though.
Oh, yeah.
Game of the week. Ohio State at Penn State. Does James Franklin beat Ohio State for the first time since 2016? Oh!
I thought you were going to say Ohio State for me.
I'm going to go Penn State.
I'm
Feels
with Tom.
like it could be reactionary, but I'm going to go Penn State.
I'm going Ohio State. I just don't think James Franklin can close the deal on it. Boy, he's had a weird couple weeks anyway, too. What is his deal? He's different. Okay, UCLA, Nebraska. I'm taking Nebraska.
Sounds good.
Ding dong, the drought is dead. I'm taking Nebraska.
You believe in it?
I do.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's time.
Like 14-10?
Maybe.
Oh, man, I don't think it's... UCLA runs the ball 25 times a game. That's it.
It's going to be fun.
I don't run the ball.
Cannot wait. Thanks for listening, Husker fans. Nebraska, UCLA this weekend. Maybe there's a funeral for that drought. We'll see. And then it's a bye week after that with some good vibes. For Tom and Sam, I'm Evan. This is the Pick Six Podcast. Thanks for listening.